The dream was absurd, almost laughable. A middle-aged banker, sober and respectable in waking life, confessed to Jung that he dreamed he was standing in the middle of a church wearing children's clothes. He felt humiliated, terrified, and oddly relieved. Most people would flip through a dream dictionary. Church means faith. Children's clothes mean immaturity. Case closed. But Jung warned, that's the wrong way to read a dream. Because dreams are not crossword puzzles. They are conversations with the unconscious, and they demand more than quick definitions. When you learn that language, something changes. Dreams stop being throwaway stories you forget by breakfast and start becoming guides. They warn you when you're in danger of self-deception. They reveal truths you'd rather not face. And they balance you when waking life goes off course. In Dreams and in his final work Man and His Symbols, Jung laid down 5 principles for reading dreams that remain some of the most profound tools in psychology today. Simple in outline, revolutionary in practice, compensation, context, associations, amplification, and attitude. In this episode, we'll walk through each of these 5 rules, not as dry theory, but as living practices. Along the way, we'll explore Jung's cases, powerful dream images, and practical steps you can try tonight. Because if you follow Jung's rules, you'll discover something most people never realize: your dreams are not meaningless noise. They are medicine, sometimes bitter, sometimes sweet, always necessary. Rule 1: Compensation. The first thing Jung noticed about dreams is that they don't flatter us. They rarely tell us what we want to hear. Instead, they show us what our conscious mind refuses to see. He called this the principle of compensation. Dreams balance the lopsidedness of our waking life, like a psychic thermostat. If your ego is too hot with pride, your dreams cool you down with images of failure. If your life is frozen with despair, your dreams warm you with surprising hope. Take the case of the cheerful businessman who came to Jung insisting he had no problems. On paper, his life was perfect: family, fortune, reputation. His dreams, however, were night after night of collapsed buildings, ruined landscapes, and dead trees. To him, they were meaningless nightmares. To Jung, they were the unconscious screaming for recognition. His optimism wasn't health, it was denial. The destruction in his dreams was a compensation, forcing him to face the grief and fatigue buried beneath the polished exterior. Compensation doesn't always arrive so dramatically. A shy student who shrinks during the day might dream of standing on a stage giving a speech to thousands. A rigid perfectionist might dream of messy chaos, a kitchen full of broken plates, a flood of paint spilling across the floor. Compensation doesn't always arrive so dramatically. A shy student who shrinks during the day might dream of standing on a stage giving a speech to thousands. A rigid perfectionist might dream of messy chaos, a kitchen full of broken plates, a flood of paint spilling across the floor. The dream isn't mocking you. It's balancing you. It's saying, here is the part of life you've ignored. Here is the opposite side of your one-sided story. This is why dream dictionaries fail. They tell you the house means the self or water means emotion. But what if the dream house is collapsing while your waking life looks perfectly stable? What if the water is drying up just as you insist everything's fine? The point isn't the symbol in isolation, it's the way the symbol compensates for your conscious stance. So the first rule is simple but powerful: when you look at a dream, ask, what is this image balancing in my waking life? That banker in children's clothes? He had been living too rigidly in his public role, presenting himself only as a dignified authority. The dream stripped him down, forced him into childlike vulnerability. His psyche was saying, don't forget the part of you that's small, dependent, human. Dreams don't serve your ego. They serve your wholeness. And the moment you grasp that, even your most uncomfortable dream begins to feel like medicine. White right pointing back hand index, but medicine has to be taken in context. And that's where Jung's second rule begins. Rule 2: Context. Dreams, Jung insisted, never float in isolation. They are rooted in the soil of the dreamer's actual life. To interpret a dream without knowing its context is like trying to understand a single line of dialogue without knowing the play. One of Jung's most famous metaphors captures this perfectly. The dream is a theater in which the dreamer is at once the scene, the actor, the prompter, the producer, the author, the public, and the critic. Every element is you, and yet every element is also responding to the life you are living right now. Consider a young soldier Jung once worked with. The soldier dreamed he was falling from a great height, over and over. A dictionary might say, falling equals loss of control. But in his context, the dream had a sharper edge. He was about to be deployed to the front lines of World War I. For him, the fall was not about abstract control. It was about the terror of being cast into the abyss of war. Now compare that to a teenager dreaming of falling the night before leaving home for college. Same symbol, but in that context, it reflects the anxiety of independence and the loss of parental safety nets. Jung saw again and again that a symbol's meaning shifts depending on the dreamer's story, their stage of life, even the sequence of other dreams that surround it. He said a dream has to be treated like a paragraph in a larger conversation. Take it out of context, and you distort its meaning. Another case, a woman dreamed of a dark, flooded basement. If you knew nothing of her life, you might say a water equals emotion. But her house had once suffered real flood damage. For her, basements carried both trauma and financial ruin. The dream wasn't abstract, it was echoing that wound while pointing to unresolved fears about safety and home. So the second rule is clear: always interpret the dream in light of the dreamer's current reality and life history. Ask, what's happening in my life right now? What unresolved conflicts, changes, or stresses might this dream be responding to? When we ignore context, we fall into fantasy interpretations. When we honor it, the dream becomes startlingly precise. Think about your own dreams. That one where you missed an exam, was it really about school? Or was it about a looming deadline at work, a relationship test, or a chance you feared you were failing? Context changes everything. A symbol divorced from life is empty. A symbol rooted in reality becomes alive, vibrant, and true. That's Jung's second rule: the dream doesn't just speak, it speaks to you, here and now, in your exact situation. White right pointing backhand index. But symbols aren't only about your situation. They also carry your emotional fingerprints. That's why Jung's third rule is about associations. Rule 3: Associations. If compensation shows us what's missing, and context roots the dream in our life, Jung's third rule takes us closer to the beating heart of the symbol of associations. This is where Jung drew a hard line against dream dictionaries. To him, they were not just useless, they were misleading. Because symbols don't live in a book. They live in you. Take the classic example, a snake. Most guides will say, snake means danger, or snake means transformation. But Jung would stop you immediately and ask, what does a snake mean to you? For one of his patients, a woman raised in rural Switzerland, snakes were terrifying. She grew up hearing stories of venomous adders in the fields. To her, the image of a snake meant betrayal and death. For another patient, a man immersed in Hindu philosophy, snakes were sacred, symbols of Kundalini energy and awakening. Same image. Two completely different meanings. That's why Jung made patients go through free association with every dream image. If you dreamed of a horse, he wouldn't lecture you about myth. He'd ask, when you think of a horse, what comes to mind? Maybe your childhood pony. Maybe wildness and freedom. Maybe the terror of being thrown to the ground. The dream is built out of your emotional vocabulary. One of Jung's favorite teaching cases was of a student who dreamed of being crushed by a massive boulder. Asked to associate freely, the student blurted out, "It's like my exams." Suddenly the dream made sense. The boulder wasn't cosmic symbolism. It was his fear of academic failure, a weight so heavy it felt crushing. Jung said it bluntly, the dream is the dreamer's own product, and we can never know what it means until we have heard what the dreamer has to say about it. So the third rule is this: always start with your own associations before you reach for any universal meaning. When you wake from a dream, take a pen and write, what does this image remind me of? What feelings does it stir? What memories does it drag out of the shadows? Don't censor yourself. Follow the thread wherever it goes. Only after tracing those associations will you glimpse what the unconscious is really saying. A snake is never just a snake. It is your snake, woven from your fears, your fascinations, your history. Right pointing back hand index. And once you've found those personal threads, Jung asks you to widen the circle, because your dream may also be speaking in humanity's oldest language, myth. Rule 4. Amplification. Once you've traced your own associations, Jung's fourth rule asks you to take a step further, into myth, culture, and the collective unconscious. He called this process amplification. Amplification doesn't replace your personal meaning. It enlarges it. It connects your private dream to humanity's oldest stories. Take, again, the image of the snake. After your associations, fear, memory, fascination, you then ask, how has humanity treated this symbol across time? And suddenly the dream widens. In the Bible, the serpent tempts Adam and Eve, knowledge and danger in one figure. In Greek myth, the snake coils around the staff of Asclepius, symbol of medicine and healing. In Hinduism, the serpent is Kundalini, the coiled energy waiting to awaken. In Egypt, the serpent crowns the pharaoh's head as the uraeus, a sign of divine authority. Now your dream isn't only about you and your backyard fear. It's tapped into a symbol cultures have used for millennia to express danger, healing, transformation, divinity. The unconscious doesn't speak in plain English. It speaks in a chorus of myth. Jung saw this again and again. A modern woman dreamed of a radiant child leading her through the forest. To her, it was just a confusing but pleasant image. Through amplification, Jung showed her it echoed the archetype of the divine child, Horus in Egypt, Krishna in India, Christ in Christianity. The dream wasn't nostalgia, it was about renewal, rebirth, the emergence of something beyond the ego. Another patient dreamed of being trapped in a house with endless rooms. He associated it with his childhood home. But through amplification, Jung showed him the timeless motif of the labyrinth. From Greek myth to medieval cathedrals, the labyrinth has symbolized the ordeal of finding the center, of wandering confusion before discovery. The dream wasn't just about family, it was about the universal journey toward wholeness. This is why Jung warned us not to stop at free association. Left there, the dream can become too narrow, too biographical. Amplification reveals the archetypal resonance. Think of it like zooming out with a camera. Up close, the snake is your snake. Zoom out, and it's also the world's snake, carrying meanings your psyche may be borrowing to say what words cannot. Jung modeled this in Man and His Symbols, where he filled entire chapters with amplified imagery, the mandala, the hero's journey, the shadow in fairy tales. He wanted readers to see their nightly dreams as stitches in the fabric of collective imagination. So the fourth rule is this: after exploring your associations, amplify the symbol through myth, art, religion, and culture. Your dream horse may recall your childhood pet. But amplified, it also echoes Pegasus, Odin Sleipnir, or the steeds of the apocalypse. It may be carrying not only your personal story, but humanity's recurring story of power, transcendence, or destruction. When you amplify, the dream stops being just a symptom. It becomes a revelation. You begin to sense that the unconscious is not only personal, it is collective, archetypal, timeless. This is why Jung called dreams the small hidden doors to the deepest layers of the soul. Each symbol is a doorway, and amplification is how you discover the corridors behind it. Right pointing back hand index, but there's one final step, and without it, everything collapses. Because even the best tools mean nothing if your attitude is wrong. Rule 5. Attitude. You could master all the techniques, compensation, context, associations, amplification, and still miss the heart of dream work if you ignore Jung's final rule, attitude. For Jung, the attitude you bring to your dreams determines everything. Treat them as meaningless static, and that's all they'll ever be. Treat them as infallible prophesies, and you'll be swallowed by fantasy. The right stance lies in between: curiosity, humility, openness. He told of a man who dismissed every dream as nonsense. "It's just my brain cleaning itself," he said. Unsurprisingly, his therapy went nowhere. The unconscious had been knocking, but he refused to answer. Another patient did the opposite. She treated every dream as divine revelation. One night she dreamed of marrying a famous actor. The next day, she packed her bags and left her husband. Her life spiraled into chaos because she failed to test the dream against reality. Jung saw both extremes as dangerous. Dismissal blinds you to your inner life. Inflation, becoming possessed by the dream, turns you into its captive. So what is the right attitude? Jung called it the transcendent attitude, a willingness to dialogue with the dream, to hold its images with respect, but also to test them, question them, live with them over time. He encouraged patients not only to interpret dreams but to let the images work on them. Draw the symbol. Write down the dialogue. Sit with the feeling it leaves. Don't rush. Don't cling. Let the dream be what it is, a message, not a command. One woman Jung treated dreamed of a black snake coiled around her bedpost. Instead of panicking, Jung guided her to sketch it, meditate on it, and record her associations. Over weeks, she realized the snake represented both her fear of betrayal and her buried sexual energy. By respecting the dream without being enslaved by it, she turned a nightmare into a turning point in her growth. The lesson is simple but profound: dreams are guides, not gods. Your job is to listen, not to worship. To engage, not to dismiss. To treat them as the living conversation they are. And here lies the paradox: when you stop treating dreams as fortune cookies and start treating them as companions, they begin to shape you. Night by night, they sculpt your awareness, reshape your choices, and call you toward wholeness. So let's gather the pieces. 5 rules. 5 ways Jung taught us to hear what our dreams are really saying. Through compensation, you see it balancing your rigid daily routine with images of freedom. Through context, you recognize you've just moved cities, torn between loyalty to your past and hope for the future. Through associations, you recall your childhood dog, the constant companion in a turbulent home. Through amplification, you see it as a timeless messenger, a psychopomp bridging worlds. And through attitude, you resist the urge to nail it down to one meaning. You carry it with you, letting it reshape your sense of loyalty and freedom. Now the dream isn't random. It isn't a puzzle you solve once and discard. It's a living presence, a counselor whispering from the deep unconscious. Jung said it best: the dream is the small hidden door in the deepest and most intimate sanctum of the soul. And that's why these 5 rules matter. They aren't tools for fortune-telling. They are keys to the hidden doors inside you, doors that open onto the whole of who you are. So tonight, when you wake at 3 a.m. with a strange image burning in your mind, don't throw it away. Don't Google it. Sit with it. Ask what it's balancing. Place it in context. Trace your associations. Amplify it with myth. Hold the right attitude. Do this, and your dreams stop being trivial distractions. They become allies. They become medicine. They become mirrors of the self you are still becoming. And maybe, just maybe, you'll discover that every night, behind your closed eyes, a secret conversation is waiting to be heard.